Welcome to another episode of DNX. I'm here today with Jules Schroeder, the founder of the Unconventional Life, and I'm really, really excited that she made the time for us today to talk to me. And so welcome, Jules. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much, Sylvia. It's so good to be here.
Thank you. Listen, I'm so curious. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about the Unconventional Life and what it is about and how you came up with it.
Yeah, so the Unconventional Life is something that I had been living in the background for years and never really had a term for it. And the whole concept behind the Unconventional Life is, how do you live a life where success isn't just defined by your career or your paycheck? How do you live a life where you can have success not just in career, but also in relationships and also traveling and making an impact while, doing things that you absolutely love? And so what Unconventional Life is essentially, is a global community similar to DNX of individuals, entrepreneurs, creatives from all over the world that basically say, yes, I want to live a life that follows the non-traditional path and live a life where I get to create for my gifts, my self-expression, to create a career and a lifestyle that I love. And so I run the Unconventional Life podcast, which has been a #1 ranked podcast for entrepreneurs the last 2 years. I host a column on Forbes called The Unconventional Life. And we do these 5-day international business accelerators in exotic locations all over the world. And we just got back from Nicaragua, where we had 80 entrepreneurs in tree houses. And next year we'll be in South Africa and a bunch of other locations. But it's really turned into this whole movement to saying yes to yourself to create a life you love.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, you know that I'm a huge fan. I was just there with you in Nicaragua and it was an incredible experience. So thank you for that. I really, really loved it. So tell me, what do you think is the #1 thing somebody who is trying to live an unconventional life, who's trying to, just like you, wanting to live more authentically to the calling of their heart? What's the #1 tip you would give them?
Yeah, I would say, the first thing that I'd recommend is just give yourself some space to actually be able to listen to yourself. And I find, we live in a culture, and I've been guilty of it itself, where we're running a million miles per hour. Some of us working 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. You get home from work, if you're at a 9 to 5, and then you're maybe doing that side hustle, and then you're working with family, and then you go to bed, and then you do it all over again. And I find that the times that I give myself space, where I intentionally put aside an hour of day. And this might be, if you've never been familiar with this concept, you can start this right now. Give yourself even 30 minutes to an hour a day and have no schedule really for that time, other just to listen to what would feel good for you in that moment. And that might be journaling, that might be picking up, a book, that might be, catching up on a creative project, that might be moving your body. This is distinctly different from working out and distinctly different than like an hour of Netflix and chill. This is like giving yourself an hour to be able to hear yourself. And ultimately, I find the more that you work that muscle, just like you'd work a muscle going to the gym, or just like you'd work a technical skill muscle at your job, you start to become more efficient at being able to listen to yourself. And I find often once we can hear, we then are able to have these intuitive guides that share, what's the next action we should take and what's the next thing in our life we should take. And I find most of the time, like where you are now in living the unconventional life doesn't have to be a huge shift. But if you start taking little micro steps and making little micro shifts, then you can, then start to adapt it and integrate it in a way that becomes applicable, in a way that will work for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love hearing that. I know that for myself, I'm here in Brazil right now. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I watch the sunrise, and I just spent the first hour of the day really just sitting on the hammock contemplating nothing, and I love that nothingness because I feel that gives me so much energetic space to create something into it, because there's no room if you don't have space, right? So, what's next? What's coming up for you next? Like, what are you working on?
Yeah, so a lot. So I'm actually, literally right before we got on the phone, I'm actually putting together the first ever online crypto and blockchain summit. So
Nice.
that's another side project. And so we have the Unconventional Life podcast, the column on Forbes, and a lot of our audience, we're always profiling, people that are following non-traditional paths, and people have just been really into this crypto and blockchain thing. And I've resisted it for a while. I'm like, this is technology and finance, like two areas that I don't excel in or have much interest to learn in. Yet, as I've gone down the rabbit hole, I was on my way back from Costa Rica after filming like 7 music videos after the Unconventional Life event. And I just got this, intuitive ping talking about the giving yourself the space. And it was like, Jules, like be a woman in this conversation, pioneer this conversation from this like female perspective, talk about like the unconventional life and host the summit. And so that's going to be happening the end of February at cryptoonlinesummit.com. And then outside of that, our unconventional life events, these 5-day accelerators, we've consistently sold out every event. The event started from a dream I had where I saw 30 entrepreneurs gathering in Bali, were the first words out of my mouth about a year and a half ago. And, we've spent $0 in marketing, and it's just such a community of, really cool individuals from all over the world. And we've grown and scaled so much that now we're going to be in South Africa. We're going to do a singles only event. So if you're like sick of trying to find like your love or your partner in like a conventional way, come spend 5 days on an island in Kauai with us in May. That's going to be happening. That's going to be a week. And then we'll be on a yacht in Croatia, and we'll be in Bali. And more than anything, I'm just in the inquiry for myself of how can I better become a vessel or a vehicle where I can remove all the stuff in the way that tends to trip me up, so I can ultimately create more effortlessly in the world, and I can have more fun doing it. And I find a lot of us can relate to this. Like sometimes we have this nagging feeling, and you might experience it, when you wake up in the morning or when you go to bed at night, and that there's more inside of you, or you have this feeling that who you are and what you're creating in the world, like there's an incongruence. Like who you know yourself to be. And if you try to point to in the world, like, this is who I am, like the job you're in or the business you're creating or the idea you have doesn't fully match the feeling you have of yourself. And I call that, the relationship to that of being a channel. And so I'm in the business of removing all of the clutter so that that congruence can live more effortlessly. And ultimately, I find when that's open, you can, just have a lot more fun and do a lot more output in a more aligned capacity. And so that's my own personal inquiry. And then it's like being expressed in a lot of ways, called an album and music videos and a crypto summit and unconventional life events and podcast conversations and different things.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you, honestly. I mean, that's probably the longest answer with the most complex things you're working on I've gotten so far on this podcast. And I'm just like, all power to you. I'm consistently so impressed by the amount of energy and love you have and the projects you bring into this world. You are actually the second woman in 2 days I'm talking to about getting really involved as a woman, a female voice in the crypto world, which I think is wonderful. I've contemplated it myself. I've been actually playing with it since October when I was doing a mastermind in Germany over the weekend, and I encountered one of the CFOs of one of the crypto mining companies, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. I have to learn more about it. So I really, really get that. I can't wait for that summit. We'll make sure that we also post the links to all of these events below this podcast. So if you thought it was too many options, be rest assured the links will be below. So when it comes, so when it comes to setting priorities, like how does somebody like you do all of this? What's your secret?
Yeah, I get that question asked a lot. They're like, Jules, like you're doing an album and a summit and like a company. And my boyfriend was just on the phone with someone, and he was like, you need to tell your girlfriend to slow down. and what I find it comes down to two things. And the two principles that I practice is one, following my highest excitement. And a good friend of mine, Jackie and Justin, have this course called Flow Mastery, which is all about the art of living in flow. And the idea behind it is I look for what, when I'm doing it, naturally just lights me up. Like I'm so excited by it, I can't not do it in that moment. And so often I find there are things in life that we feel like we should do, or it's like man, I haven't, spent enough time on my music lately, or I'd love to get back to bike riding, or man, I'm not working out at the gym. And so we actively have to like tell ourselves to make that a priority. And that's not what I'm talking about. And then there's the things where we get this idea and we just can't stop talking about it. Like we can't stop talking about it to our friends or our coworkers or our significant others. Like it's like living and breathing inside of us. And I listen for that. And I call that following your highest excitement. And I find when that's present, like that trumps every other idea that I'm working on. And so how I prioritize stuff is I literally just prioritize what is my highest excitement in the moment. Like where do I naturally feel the most energy and momentum already happening that I can literally plug myself into this like moving system rather than trying to generate stuff, or like effort myself or discipline myself into like sitting down and making lists and to-do lists, which in my ways is very much like the old model or the conventional model. And so I try to plug into where those natural systems. And I find when I do that, I naturally am creating in more alignment. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about alignment and excitement, when those two things are present, it becomes effortless. And I find that's where you can put one step in and get 10 steps out, or what I call the minimum movement, maximum impact strategy. And that's kind of my shortcut is I look for how do I focus my energy there? And then how do I actually keep my energy to myself and not put it anywhere else and just wait for that opportunity. And then I execute from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone's calling you.
Yeah. I'm the oldest of 5 girls, and my youngest sister just called. So yeah, who was also at our event.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, your younger sister that told this extraordinary poem.
Yeah, we were in Nicaragua, and my youngest sister does like embodied spoken word and did this 10-minute piece. And it was like, she's 16 and it was incredible. And she works for me. 2 of my sisters work for me in the company. But she was just calling. So
yeah. I was so, speaking of which, I just have to say it. I was so impressed by her poetry and her presentation. I was speechless. It was wonderful. So, what came to mind when you were talking about setting priorities in a more unconventional way, I just think it's so important for people to understand that it's okay to follow your highest excitement, right? That doing it unconventionally is probably going to cost you less time and less energy, and it's going to produce more of a momentum, which I think, following the synergy it has been one of the most exciting things for me in my life too. I'm here you have new neighbors now here in Brazil, and I've just been head down working on something that I was so excited about, and there was no wind for 2 days, so I couldn't go out and kite, which usually is my priority here. And it just got hit by a wave of creativity that I really, really wanted to deliver on. And my new neighbors that never met me before could not make sense of what was going on with me because I was not interested in interacting, because I was a woman on a mission, because that in that moment was more exciting to me than anything else. And luckily the wind died, so there was no distraction. And I think there's no coincidence, right? There was this portal in the universe that said, no wind, sit down, get this out on paper and plan it. Yeah. So I can. Yeah.
Totally. Well, and it's almost like counterintuitive in a lot of ways, where we've almost been told, if like we encounter resistance, like push through it, or like keep going, or, if you're not doing anything at all, then you must be lazy. And this kind of approach of like following the synchronicity, following the flow, following the highest excitement is kind of opposite of what you've been told, which is kind of like, okay, just trust, like radically accept. Okay, if there's no wind or if this is happening, that's actually probably going to be more aligned. Or like, okay, nothing feels exciting. When I feel that, it's usually an indicator to pause and wait until something does, instead of try to make something exciting. And so it's like a rewiring, which for those hearing this and might be hearing these concepts for the first time, it's a little strange at first. Like it definitely is new and it's different. And once you do create the map, like it makes everything like 10x more enjoyable. And it sounds like, I know you personally have been playing with that for a while. So
yeah, I call it the art of managing delay. So it's almost like a form of procrastination. I don't even know why people think it's a bad thing, because, if you just pause and wait when in doubt, and, manage intuitively manage the delay, you will inevitably notice that if you don't push through this wall, something will fade away and something else will come in its place,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to have the patience and most of the time the audacity to say, no, no, I'm just not doing that right now. That just feels misaligned. I can't tell you why. Like, I haven't gotten that far, but the answer is definitely no. And it's so, to me, if I would have pushed through these walls and barriers that I thought that convention were telling me I should get behind, I would have cheated myself out of the most extraordinary journeys I've had, because they're the ones that opened up immediately when I paused long enough to just wait and see what would happen if I don't do what people say I should do. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Yeah. And I think like if I take it a step further, it's like if I'm not getting a clear read is how I relate to it, meaning I'm not getting like a clear yes or a clear no. It usually for me is an indicator that I don't have enough data or I don't have enough information. And that's literally like the indicator of pause. And so for those of you hearing this, like if there is a decision you're wanting to make in your life or something you're unsure about and you can't get like a clear yes or no, you're like, it could be a yes, it could be a no, like just pause and give it a little bit more time. And I find you'll know when it's the yes and you'll know when it's the no.
Yeah. It never fails to amaze me. Even as simple as this morning, there were, my neighbors wanted to sell me a kite, and I thought, oh, great, I can just buy my own equipment. And like somehow I was bombarded with so much information of why this was beneficial for me to do that. And yet my entire system all of a sudden went into like, no, the evidence was there. It sounded good. It looked like a good deal. It was all there. And then inevitably an hour later, it turns out that the kite was defective. Right. And I thought, how interesting is that? I could have just been like, yeah, got all the information. Sounds like a good idea. System says no. Don't know why. I'm going to go with a no. And if you really, and it takes practice, but the more you do it, the more you recognize, I find, these systems or these signs within yourself that you go, I don't know. Most of the time, honestly, I don't know why I'd say no. It's just no. And then inevitably, and then shortly thereafter, there will be something that gives me the clarity. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I relate to it almost like tools, just like in the conventional world or the world we're all brought into, we have our own tools for logic reasoning and how to logically see if this is a good argument or a good purchase or a good buy. And we use these tools and skills we've developed over our lifetime. Like living this unconventional life also has a set of tools and principles that take practice and take perfecting, like listening to yourself, creating space, following your highest excitement, checking in with your body. And so for anyone that's hearing this conversation and is like, I do not live in this world yet. No, it's just like tools and practices. That's also one thing we expand on in the unconventional, life events. But also too, we put together this really great guide, which is a free guide. It's like 10 resources, and you guys can head to unconventionallifeshow.com/guide, and it will like break down some of these tools in a more concrete manner. So you can check that out there too.
Yes. And again, we will have those links below on the podcast. Thank you, Jules, so much. This was really, really exciting. I can't believe we're already at the end of our time. I just want to make sure, is there one more thing that you want to tell, like one more thing you want to tell our audience to leave them with?
Yeah. So it's an exciting time to be alive right now in so many ways. Like so many industries and way things have been are shifting, and there's so much room, which is why crypto, for example, like in my opinion, it's like one of the biggest wealth growing opportunities, of the century in the next, upcoming 6 months. We're just getting started in it. And not only like beyond crypto, if that's not your thing at all, like just even innovating, there's 1,000,001 ways now to make money in the world with the internet. And so inside of that, things that usually have been or traditionally have been stagnant or stuck that used to take a lot of time to create change, those things are now moving and are becoming a lot easier to create, to innovate, to explore. And so if there's anything about this conversation that resonates with you, I just urge you to pay attention to that and honor that. And there might be people in your life right now that don't fully get it, and that's okay. You are the only one with your vision. And since you are the only one with your vision, being in a conversation like this and finding community that can hear your vision is like paramount to really helping that grow. And so just trust whatever, is resonating with you, and know that like now is really it. And if there's something you've been sitting on, like take that micro step. Doesn't mean like burn the bridges, quit your job, quit everything, but just like what's that next micro step you could take like right after this podcast ends that you could start shifting, to live a life that has more expression and aliveness and excitement for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jules. Thank you for making the time to be here today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sylvia. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your ongoing support. Before I leave you, I want to invite you into my world. Please go check out dnxcommunity.com. This is where you'll find the other nomads and evaders of convention. We'll see you there. And if you're interested in our English-speaking events, go and check out dnxglobal.com. You'll find the link below this podcast as well. And if you have time, one last favor, please go to iTunes, look for Sylvia Chrisman or look for the DNX podcast and leave a review. Thank you so much, lovely people, and I'll talk to you next time.